Hey, what's shaking, everyone? So, the ADL has a map of the United States here that tracks several hate based crimes and gatherings that you can filter through by ideology, incident type, and even by state or city. And some of those crimes include extremist murders, terrorist plots and attacks, extremist police shootouts, white supremacist events, white supremacist propaganda, and anti Semitic incidences. So, I did us all a favor and immediately slapped on the left-wing filter under the ideology category, and lo and behold, the Anti-Defamation League says that there are, well, at least in 2020, 0 instances so far. How can they legitimately claim that, considering all of the daily crimes that are currently ransacking the United States? This is an example of how the media frames their lies. Oh, the press can cite their expert sources and claim that left-wing violence is a myth, Jerry Nadler for one. Or Black Lives Matter and Antifa are protesting peacefully because the Anti-Defamation League claims their atrocities simply don't exist. If you search out the truth, if you find yourself coming across real news, pundits and commentators like Tim Pool, Styx Hexenhammer, Officer Brandon Tatum, the list goes on and on. You can see the lies in real time. You can see that for every criminal's death that ignites fiery weeks and months of violence and murder, the fossilized press, television, radio, corporate websites will frame it as though police were going out to hunt someone based on the color of their skin, and the likes of George Floyd, Rayshard Brooks, Jacob Blake, Dion Kay, and so forth were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and simply happened to be today's target for a bunch of racist cops. But in reality, the police were alerted by law-abiding citizens that they were breaking the law. I'll tell you what, policing is an institution that is not systemically racist. The creed is to serve and protect, right? They specialize in pattern recognition and use their skills and training to de-escalate situations and use the minimum necessary force to resolve conflict. The sickening amount of love for these murdered criminals that I had previously mentioned, solely based on spin, mind you, is the unforgivable sin of the bygone press. People mess up sometimes. We understand this. No one is perfect, and idealistically, we would all like to see everyone pass away of old age peacefully, and not tragically in an unavoidable conflict. In my opinion, life is as hard as you make it. Perseverance, honesty, and goal setting will get you where you need to be in life. And that is why I see these senseless riots and have to speak out. These groups like BLM and Antifa are not honest in their intentions. They lack coherent goals and are only persistent in destruction and the creation of division. And these groups are being fed dishonesty by the media. I want to highlight 5 officers that have been underreported and outright forgotten by the fossilized press. These are men and women that are actually worth protesting for in order to create a better society. These are the officers that have been unjustly treated, injured, or killed in some instances during these unending riots. Their stories need telling, and they need to be remembered. I'd like to go ahead and start off light by bringing up Officer Jaquay Williams. 29 referred to himself only as Officer Williams on TikTok, a video-based social media platform, posted a short clip of himself in uniform on May 27th. What he said in the video was, "I am disgusted with the things that happened in Minneapolis," Williams said, who was sworn in as an officer in August 2019. He went on to describe what happened, noting that Floyd was up against 4 officers in the viral video footage of his death. "As an officer, you are a first responder," Williams said. "If someone is hurt, you have to render aid. That's the reason I got behind this badge, right? Because the officers that are afraid to step up, I want to be the one to step up. If I see wrong happening, wrong is not happening in my presence." Well, after posting that video and being quite honest about what he's seen based on the information we had at the time of the George Floyd killing, those statements that Officer Williams made stand as being a perfect example of what the police department is designed and what they do for the overwhelming majority of the time. Not long after that video was posted, he was fired by the Greensboro Police Department. It goes on to say in this article that he was fired due to personnel issues after he was placed on administrative leave, and there was a comprehensive analysis of this situation, and they determined that it was best if he was no longer a part of the force. Unfortunately, the case study only gets more violent from here. As we next go to Seattle, Officer Kelly Khalifi says that she's really frustrated and disheartened. She told Como News she supports peaceful protests and has had conversations with them about change, but she's upset with people who are violent and want to hurt police officers like her. I'm feeling hurt, physically and emotionally. I didn't expect this to happen, said Khalifi. We're human beings behind this badge. We are people just like them. We decided to do this for a living because who else is going to do it? Absolutely admirable. Nearly 3 years on the force, one of the most violent calls for the 34-year-old was a chaotic riot at the East Precinct last weekend. This was during the rise and short life of the Chaz/Chop, by the way. SPD said protesters set buildings on fire and threw explosives, bottles, and rocks at officers. One of those rocks hit one of her legs and she twisted a knee. Now she has a torn meniscus, needing surgery and physical therapy. All because she was responding to crime happening due to these misguided riots. Unfortunately, it continues to get worse. Patrick Underwood, a 53-year-old federal law enforcement officer, was shot dead while providing security at a federal building in Oakland, California. On the night of May 29th, Underwood and other federal protective service officer were at the Ronald V. Delamus Federal Building when they were shot, said the FBI. The second officer did survive. Underwood was posted near the protests, which turned violent, according to the AP. The federal building's glass doors were smashed and the buildings were vandalized with anti-police graffiti, the AP said. So this was very early on during the riots. George Floyd happened in Minneapolis and Patrick Underwood was killed in Oakland. Now the next story doesn't have an officer that died, but it is, in my opinion, equally as tragic, if not more so, because a police officer who was shot in the head during a Las Vegas Strip protest of the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis is paralyzed from the neck down on a ventilator and unable to speak, his family said in a statement released by police. Officer Shea Michelonis, 29, was shot June 1st during protests over the death of Floyd at the hands of police. At time of recording here on the 6th of September, he is no longer ventilated in the hospital. He can't communicate verbally, rather. He has a very, very, very long road ahead of him in order to recover. And probably the most famous case that I have brought up here for the finale is Officer David Dorn. He was a retired police captain who was shot and killed in the early morning hours of June 2nd when trying to protect his friend's pawn shop during a night of violent protests sparked by the death of George Floyd, his widow said. Dorn's last moments were caught on video and apparently posted on Facebook Live, though the video has since been taken down. He was killed by people who had broken into Lee's pawn and jewelry, and his body was found on the sidewalk at about 2:30 a.m., investigators said. His death came on a violent night in St. Louis, where four officers were shot. Officers were pelted with rocks and fireworks, and 55 businesses were burglarized or damaged, including a convenience store that burned. Police also shot and gravely injured a burglary suspect who they said shot at officers. So a common slogan of these mobs and these riots over the past, nearly 100 days or over 100 days at this point has been say their name, say her name, say his name. If they want to continue doing that, I have a list of names for people. How about Jaquay Williams? How about Ellie Khalifi, Shea Michelonis, David Underwood, and David Dorn? That'd be a great place to start. So to wrap this up, I have one more screen I'd like to show you guys. Here we have the ACLED's map collecting and cataloging information on political violence, demonstrations, and strategic developments in the United States, based on numbers and incidents from the 24th of May all the way through the 22nd of August. Battles, riots, violence against citizens, strategic developments, and protests. It's very wide-ranging, and this is all due to what happened to George Floyd. So a proper explanation from the ACLED is followed in this box here. nationwide demonstrations. While the U.S. has long been home to vibrant protest environment, demonstrations surged to new levels in 2020. Between the 24th of May and 22nd of August, ACLED records more than 10,600 demonstrations events across the country. Over 10,100 of these, nearly 95%, involve peaceful protests. Fewer than 570, or approximately 5%, involve demonstrators engaging in violence. Well over 80% of these demonstrations are connected to Black Lives Matter movement or the COVID-19 pandemic. So 8,500 of these incidences are directly connected, hey? And you want us to believe that because they claim that 95% of these are mostly peaceful, and therefore, don't worry about these demonstrations because they are mostly peaceful? I want to take this a step further. If we applied this logic to a different circumstance with a similar set of numbers, we shouldn't have to be in a global lockdown anymore because COVID is a mostly non-deadly virus, right? Unless you're ancient and have several comorbidities. 6% of people actually die specifically of COVID, while 94% of people have 2 and 3 additional comorbidities. This overall topic of officers being injured in the line of duty hits close to me. I have several members of my extended family who are officers. One who is stationed in Las Vegas, in fact, probably knows Officer Michelonis. They're great, honest people doing a horrifically dangerous job to the best of their abilities. The left radicals want to defund and abolish the police. I want more funding for better officers, better training, and better equipment. In my opinion, the way society functions is through taking on the largest amount of responsibility you can each day, and do so with grace to inspire improvement, to paraphrase Dr. Jordan Peterson. The police, armed forces, firefighters, and all of the other first responders do that to the highest levels each and every day. And my passion, my responsibility, is to set the world in order through my words, through the truth, so we don't have to live in this chaotic state like this any longer. I thank you for the gift of your attention, and if you enjoyed this content, I have many other videos discussing more specific topics, where I speak in a much more spicier tone, crack a few more jokes in the process. I'm just getting started as well, so it would be greatly appreciated if you could like, potentially subscribe if you do enjoy this video here. It would go a long way for me. I've been Khan-Swaylo, and I want you guys to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.